Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Andre with AndreReese.Biz. Oh man, it's a little cold out here today. I'll get to that in a second here. But man, so let's just I'll jump right into it, tell you what we're going to talk about, and then I'll kind of fall back a little bit. So today I'm going to talk about what some may deem to be horror stories that have occurred at some of the places I have worked at in the past. And I think one of the main things I'm going to talk about is my time I spent at Providian Financial. But in the meantime, man, it's been a while since you guys have seen me. The weather out here, Virginia, has been a little cold. So we had on Martin Luther King, I didn't post anything that day, but I hope everybody had a great day commemorating the holiday. We had snow a couple days ago. I don't know if it was on King Day or the day before, or the actual day, but we had snow just for a little bit. I think it was on Monday. And it came down out here a little bit, and it's been so cold that here, hang on a second. Make sure I can get through this. Okay. It's been so cold out here that the little bit of snow that fell has not completely melted. We still have some ice on our roof at the house. And man, and speaking of ice, you know, this weekend, starting on Saturday, we were supposed to have a blizzard come through, and you guys have probably seen it on the news and stuff. Kind of crazy. And we were supposed to get between 25 and 30 inches of snow. Crazy. I'd never ever experienced anything like that before in my life. I actually went online and Amazon last night and bought a shovel and a ice, it's kind of like a giant flat ice shovel. Just we get some condensation on our driveway, gets a little icy. I want to be able to break that stuff up easily. But man, you can see behind me here, this house here has got the covers out protecting its critical foliage and stuff. So, but now what it's turned to, we're going to have probably a little bit of snow, but we're going to have ice rain. And so I'm not familiar with the term. I know a lot of you guys may not be familiar with the term either if you're not from the East Coast, but essentially what happens is, because of the disturbance in the atmosphere between a cold front and a warm front, kind of in the middle, cold on top, what happens is it snows. It snows real nice, and what happens is, as the snow is falling through the atmosphere, it eventually, as it's falling through the atmosphere, it eventually melts in the warm layer, and then because it's so cold close to the ground, as it lands, it freezes. And it's different than sleet, because sleet will essentially bounce off of stuff, but the freezing rain will coat trees and power lines. So it's the model's still evolving. I like the one better when we had 30 inches of snow, but man, we're gonna head out tonight and stock up on provisions and be able to ride this out. So that's what the immediate goal is. But yeah, it's cold right now, and I figured, even though it's cold, this might be my last chance to get out here and bike ride for a while. So it's in the 40s right now, like 42, and I got to keep an eye out, because if I look out our window, we've got frozen ice that's been on the balcony now for days, also on the roof. So I just got to keep an eye out for potential patches of black ice that might be down. So yeah, so I'm a little excited to see this set of weather events. You know, let's see how it plays out. But with anything, you always got to be prepared and have a plan, and that's what we plan on doing, is being prepared and have a plan. But man, before I jump into the main topic, man, things have been kind of a little bit crazy out here on these current event streets. I'll tell you, I didn't get a chance to talk about it right when it came out, but this whole Drewski thing, if you follow him, he's a very, very popular, he's on Instagram, TikTok, you know, all that stuff. He does some incredible skits. And so he did this skit where he bum rushed a church, paid them a fee, and he went through and did a number of reenactments of some of the most craziest things that you're going to see pastors and men of faith that lead congregations, mostly at the super church level, doing. And so if you guys can get a chance to see the skit, check it out and see it. And I'll tell you, it is wild and crazy. And the thing about it is, a lot of that stuff is true. You know, there are example after example that you can utilize, you know, to be able to draw on to create that skit that he did, and he sure did. And people have done side-by-side comparisons after the fact, you know, and, you know, I know a lot of folks out there are not happy in the religious world. I get it. You know, they say it's blasphemy. I get that also as well. But I just, one of those things where folks, when they do get to be in charge and run stuff, you know, and I know one of the big things, there's actually one down, I want to do it one day. There's this huge production that they put on down in Texas at a church for Christmas, where they have people flying over the crowds and drummer boys playing the drums on cables and stuff. And I want to check it out one time. So, but yeah, when you get to that level, it definitely becomes a little bit more about entertainment. And sometimes people do go a little bit too far, you know. So, got to keep the focus on the prize and what the purpose of doing these things are. And, you know, however you got to go about, you know, reaching people and bringing them into the flock, that's up to each individual pastor and leader of a church for them to decide. And if they're not doing it correctly, what's going to end up happening is hopefully the people that are a member of the congregation, the flock, or the church will walk. And it'll provide instant feedback, and then they'll stop doing it at some point. So yeah, so that's that takes care of that. And also too, man, things are heating up there in Minnesota right now. Wow. Yes. I guess the big thing right now is, I guess, Don Lemon accompanied a group of people that went in and interrupted a church service on Sunday. I don't know if you can do that or not. I thought there's a number of protections in play, but I'm not a legal scholar, you know, but members of Department of Justice are talking about deploying a number of acts on him and the people that were part of this disruption. So, yeah, I get it. You know, I think when I was watching the videos, one of the things he talked about is that the reason why they were there is because of free speech, but I don't think that is a fair application of free speech, because I think churches are considered to be private property, and you got to figure you can't just walk into some random person's house and walk in and just start yelling and screaming because they're watching something on TV that you don't agree with. and say, hey, it's freedom of speech is while I'm here. So, but you know, I just hope that the folks that are involved in these things, I think the best thing you can do is protest and make your voice heard, but stay on the sidewalk. That seems to be the best policy at this point that people can employ. So if you got to go out there and get involved in these things, you know, I get it, all good, but just stay on the sidewalk, and that way you'll minimize your chances of getting ending up on the wrong side of the situation. And I'll tell you, the way things are going right now, this whole situation there's going to be something catastrophic that will happen, and it seems like a lot of control has been lost. So just be careful as you guys are out there in these streets doing what you got to do. And I think they even had like a walk off the job protest yesterday, starting at I guess Trump has been in office now for a full year as of yesterday, the 20th. And so if you're counting, it's 3 more years to go. And a lot of folks wanted to go ahead and protest and walk off the job. They had tried to organize something nationally. I didn't follow up and see how the progress on that worked out, you know. But like I said, if you guys want to express yourself, do so. You got the right to do so as well. But just keep in mind the limitations what's provided in the Constitution. I'm not an attorney. I never even played one on TV. If you got to find out for sure, consult somebody. But I think a fair position to be in is just stay on the sidewalk and do what you got to do. And hopefully things will be better in the long run for everybody. So, all right, so that's it on that subject. So, and the last thing I'll just talk about randomly is, man, this whole thing with Unc and Destination Smokehouse and tenderism is heating up. And so a lot of folks are angry and upset and mad because they found out that Unc did not own the business. And I'll tell you what, here's the thing. Before you jump on any bandwagon, you got to at least do a little bit of research. And so I went ahead and looked at, I don't think I was following Destination Smokehouse, but I'll tell you, when I first started seeing tenderism videos, I knew that Unc did not own that business. He doesn't have the energy or the mindset that a business owner throws off. And in my business and my company, I deal with folks all the time, and I can tell if they have that unstoppable spirit in them, and he doesn't have that. So, and I didn't never held that against him at all. And I think a lot of people are mad because they had hoped that he had been part of the management, and that's the main reason why they were going. He was part of the ownership also as well. But if you actually go back and look, and I think I had seen before some videos, and I saw that one guy that everybody's tripping on right now. I saw him creeping in the background. I said, oh, that guy is the owner of the business. I can just tell, just by his energy and his demeanor and the way that he was lurking and creeping in the background. And just to kind of prove a point, if you go and take a look at the Destination Steakhouse, or Destination,
0 miles, duration 30
the Destination Smokehouse, if you look at the videos on Instagram or YouTube, or I should say TikTok, you'll see for yourself that this has never been a secret that Unc was not an owner of the destination spot. You'll see in the early beginning, probably the first 2/3 of the videos that they have listed on their social media is all the other guy. And at some point, somewhere about 2/3 of the way into it, you first see Unc working in the background in a tent, and he's moving food around and doing whatever he's doing. And, from that point, he comes to the front at one moment, and he's there, and you can see that he's being supervised. And even after he started doing his tenderism thing, you can, there was a point where him and the owner were actually inside at the soda machine, and the owner was like, hey, since I own this place, we can do something with this soda. I don't remember exactly what it was. So it's like never been a secret at all, but I think people have gotten bent out of shape, and I understand as well. But the thing about it is, Unc is extremely happy with the relationship that they had. And not everybody wants to be an owner. Not everybody wants to put their life on the line and put everything at risk. And Unc was more than happy to, fulfill the role that he had. And as far as like the whole thing with and if you look at the videos, when they pull the big bone, you can tell that the meat has already been cut, all good. And I think the oxtails were actually pretty tender and all that. It's all marketing. I can't hold it against them at all. But this is the thing. You guys got to remember, and I think there's some issues right now about the owner trying to trademark the tenderism trademark, but there was another attorney, I forget what his name was, something Davis. He went ahead and trademarked it and tried to reach out to Unc. So this is where the okay, good. This is where the legend begins. He reached out to Unc and said, "Hey, Unc, I've got this trademark for you," and using the term tenderism, and Unc allegedly said he didn't want it. He didn't want to have to deal with the headaches involved with it. So he told the guy to keep it. So I guess the attorney now is the one that controls it. But at some point, after Harris jumped in and trademarked the term, the actual owner jumped in and he tried to trademark it as well. So this, and the reason why I even bring this up is this is not unlike any other issue that's happening right now in the United States. And so everybody wants to see things their own way, and they're able to find enough information to at least minimally support how they feel. But in the end, a lot of times what people project and put out there to be true is not accurate. So all I try to do is just encourage you guys, before you jump to conclusions, get out there and just kind of look around yourself. It's pretty easy to do. Everything is right there on the social media, and it kind of dates itself. So, and there's so many of us, and that's the thing. Typically when you work at a job for your employer, whatever you do, whatever you create, whatever you make using the employer's assets or money, it belongs to them. And if you invent stuff after hours that's unrelated, a lot of times those things are going to be your individual creations that you can run and start a business with, and so Unc did all this definitely on company time, and he definitely is the man that's on the forefront of all this. But let this be a lesson to all of us. If you have a great idea, save it and keep it to yourself. And if you have to go out and go on your own, do so. And if you can't, maybe you could work out an arrangement with your employer where you get some equity or some additional compensation for an incredible idea. But, you know, the whole entire market-based economy we have in the United States, most of it is based on inventions that employees made, you know, while they were at work. And if you take a look at something like the iPhone, you know, and if you go look it up, there are all types of patents for new things that were created. The different employees and teams that were working on those patents, you know, they're listed, but, you know, that property belongs to the employer. So, you know, I've seen people before in the past that have worked for Apple and left and started their own thing and created their own products, etc. And so these are kind of the things you're going to have to think about. So, you know, at this point, it's a marketing disaster for Destination Smokehouse. And, you know, they're going to have to see if they can ride this whole thing out and do something differently. And it looked like, I think the last video where they were together, they were escorting Unc off the property, and they put his behind on the plane and shipped him off someplace. So, you know, we'll see how everything kind of plays out. But, you know, it's a lesson for us all to learn about working, intellectual capital, ideas, and all that. And just be aware and just be careful if you do ever come up with something that's remarkable. You know, you might have to leave the company and start your own thing. And depending upon how big the company is, and if it's potentially, you know, related in some way, be prepared for a legal fight and for them to say that you developed, you know, something like this using their resources and stuff. So that's it. That's Destination Steakhouse. That's, you know, the church being bum rushed. And I think I mentioned it already, but it looks like they might be trying to bring Don Lemon up on charges, you know. And so let's get into the final thing here I'm going to talk about. This is the actual topic. And it kind of is related in a way to... I used to work for... And I got a couple stories here to tell you. I don't know how much time I'm going to have. I'm going to be able to get it all done. If not, I'll jump back on and do another video. Looks like I got about 40 minutes. I might be able to get them all done. I'm going to try my best here. But I used to work for a company, and I typically don't disclose any information. I talk in parables and riddles. But everything I'm going to talk about here happened, and there were some legal issues, court cases that happened, and you know, the company is gone. It's out of business now. It got absorbed by another company that also went out of business. You know, so this happened. How long ago did this happen? This happened. So the company I'm talking about is Providian Financial. And Providian Financial was, I believe it was a San Francisco-based company. It started someplace in the Midwest or back east. I think it started out originally as First Deposit Corporation. It was kind of like a bank. And then eventually became Providian Financial, I think in 1995-ish, 1996, whatever it might have been. But they had big offices, and I think their corporate office was in San Francisco. And then at the time, I was working at their call center out in Pleasanton. And just before I get into all this story is all about fraud and how I ended up working in this environment and what I did and how I coped with the whole thing. So essentially, Providian Financial, once it spun itself and rebranded itself, they were a credit card company. And so what they did was they essentially focused on the bottom end. At that time, I don't think people really knew anything about it, but they focused, and I don't think it even had a name at the time, but they focused on the subprime lending market for credit cards. And so we all know what subprime is right now. This is the low grade credit portfolios of people that don't have the best credit, low credit scores, that type of stuff. And so what Providian did was they started out acquiring low-end portfolios from major banks of folks that they that fit kind of what their model was. And essentially there was this guy. He was I think he was the president, CEO, chairman of the board. This guy was brilliant. He had a PhD in mathematics, and he came from India and integrated out this way. And what he essentially did is he took a look at the subprime market at the time, and he was the first one to develop mathematical models and algorithms that would take into consideration a lot of different factors. And those factors would essentially help him determine how much risk the average person that lived on a rural route road in the middle of the country, how much debt could they take on, and would they take on and not default. And so what they did was they would push these things to the limits. And so they started to push out credit cards where they were targeting this subprime group of people. And within the model itself, they would look at people that were farmers, people that were relatively, living close, a little bit above the poverty level. They were looking at folks that had a lot of pride and a lot of gumption. They didn't have a lot of money, but to them, if they said they were going to pay back their bills, that's what they were going to do. They would pay back their bills. And so sometimes they'd be a little bit late, but they would always somehow get caught up. And that's what he built the company on, was trying to create products for these people. And this group of people, they always were in debt. And their goal was to one day no longer be in debt. And I think at the time, one of the big things that people used to talk about was, if you can get a consolidation loan and put all your credit cards and all your debt on a consolidation loan, that's the best thing to do. That's the best advice. And over time, what'll happen is you can turn around and pay everything down over time. And so that was the product that they created. They created a credit card that was designed to entice people that wanted to consolidate their debt and try to get their debts paid down. And if they can get a lower rate and get it done even quicker, they were going to be so happy about doing that. And so that's what he essentially did. So all the people that were the early customers and clients of Providian, they generally fit that overall model. All good. And and I worked there. That was like my last job I had before I was finishing up college as a returning student. Before that, I worked at Good Guys. They went out of business. I worked at Circuit City. I worked at McDuff Electronics, all the different consumer electronic places. So as I was finishing up my degree at Cal State Hayward, I ended up getting a job at Providian Financial. And this was kind of right at the tail end of the dot-com boom. And so in the Bay Area, the dot-com boom was just booming. And then you kept hearing about all these people that were becoming millionaires, and a lot of folks that weren't capable of working for these tech companies. They were looking at the chop and looking at the bit and hoping somehow, some way that they can become, a part of this boom. And you kept hearing about for the first time how these companies had all these wonderful perks where they had coffee and tea and soda and soup, and they had instead of giving you sick leave and vacation, they would just give you a pool of PTO that you can use whenever you want to. And if you got PTO, you would get that all on your first day of work, kind of a thing. And so what Providian did was they positioned themselves between two sets of people. One is the employees that were going to be doing the work, and the second one that they positioned themselves in between was the people that were going to find a ways to the means, which were the customers of Providian Financial itself. And so this is the unique thing. Providian Financial, if you look at the name, they've always known what they were doing and what they were about. And so if you take the name Providian Financial, it stands for, it's two words that make up one word. It's provide and IAN. So when you take a look at the way the word is split up, Providian, provide, and IAN, resembling characteristics of, the company has essentially created financial products that resemble the characteristics of supplying what was needed to people. And so that was kind of like the first clue. If you take and dissect their name, they've always known what their goal was. And and if you take a look at a word like Christian, it means you resemble characteristics of Christ. So the IAN, that's kind of what it means on the root of the word. And so what they ended up doing was they ended up hiring a bunch of people during this time in the Bay Area when the dot-coms were just exploding everywhere. And the folks that they would hire to work in the call center, a lot of these folks were struggling and they needed a good job, and the benefits and opportunities that Providian provided on their end was fantastic for these groups of people that ended up working there. So somewhere along the way, I heard about them. They paid really well, and I was like, you know what? Let me get out of doing the sales stuff. Let me migrate over to something a little bit more office-based, because that's where I'm going to be. So I ended up going to and they were going through a massive hiring campaign. And so they would have job fairs everywhere. They would hire people on the spot. And the primary position that they were hiring for was personal bankers. And so they had a couple different levels of personal banker. They had a personal banker 1, personal banker 2, and a personal banker 3. And so PB1, PB2, PB3. And when you went to their Pleasant location where I worked at, it was a beautiful campus that they had out in Pleasanton. They had multiple buildings, I think 5 or 6. The buildings were brand new. They were beautiful, ghosted out glass. You had to use a badge to badge in, and you had to badge out when you left at the end of the day. They had security. So a lot of folks that worked there, they had never really worked in these type of, high-tech environments. And so once you came into the location, they had a really large break room where you can get, ice and hot drinks. You can also get soup if you wanted to, and everything you needed was there. And once you hit the floor, it essentially was a vast, wide open floor that, and if you looked at it, just as far as you can see, it was rows and rows and rows of cubicles that were like half walled, where you can, if you walked in, you can see the shoulders of everybody's head. And at the very front of the cubicles, there was a really, really large cubicle, and that's usually where the team leader at the time. That's where they would sit. And so the places were visually stunning. They were absolutely amazing. And in the center of the whole spot, they would have, it was the dialer crew. And so those guys were responsible for loading all the stuff into the systems. That way, all the people that were there, calling customers and stuff, they would be able to, they would be able to control all the technology. And so, like I said, I applied for the job, I got it, I was happy, and I had my PTO bank started on the first day. And, a brother goes through training, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks before, and during the training, you go through, you see all the ice there. During the training, you go through a series of, textbooks and, pamphlets, manuals, and there's people that come in that walk you through everything. And I think my class might have been like 20. We were in a conference room. I think by the end of it, I think most of us survived and made it through. And so we were all very happy. And, and so what they would do sometimes, we would listen in on calls as they were occurring.
6.0 miles.
The trainer could, dial in and listen to a particular personal banker. And, and then that we can listen to it, then they would critique it, and then we would get an idea of how it all worked. So essentially, once we got all the basics down, we were learning a script. And so the environment was 100% scripted. And so everything that happened with that company ran through legal. And if there was a question that needed to be answered, we had to read it verbatim that was on the script. If there was, when we first talked to somebody on the phone, there was a procedure that we went through to kind of build rapport. We had to follow everything, to the T. So a lot of what we were doing here in training was learning how to, role play and get used to talking to people. Then we would occasionally go out on the floor, sit side by side with a personal banker and that was on the phones. And we go back inside and discuss. So a lot of this was getting us juiced up. And so the thing was, it was a very competitive environment. And so if you were a PB1, you got paid a certain amount. If you were a PB2, you got paid a certain amount. If you were a PB3, those were the most elite. And those guys made the most sales, did the most transfers. And, everybody wanted to be a PB3 because, like I said, they made the most money. And, and it being a competitive environment, everybody at their cubicle, they had a board that they would mark down when they went through and did a whole complete balance transfer, and they would tally it. So you'd have to start out, go through, get information, transfer balances, and then turn around and read the exit script. And then once you did all that, you were pretty much done at that point. So then that constituted a sale. You take a couple seconds, get yourself reoriented, and then get back on the dialer and talk to the next series of people. So, and essentially what happened was eventually I got through training, passed, and got out on the floor, and eventually I was on my own. So this is the thing. A lot of people that they were dealing with at the time, like I said, they were all subprime folks, and we would read a script to them that was designed and worded in such a way that it was very, very slippery. And so if I had a financial need, based upon the language that was used, if I was listening to the script, I'd be like, whoa, this is the product that I need. And if I had another particular need, It'd be like, whoa, this is the script. This is the product I've been waiting for, praying for. Thank you, Jesus is here. And so, and like I said, and it was designed to resemble characteristics of supplying what you needed. And so on the back end, what we would do is we would essentially read this script to people. And at the time, Visa Platinum credit cards were very brand new. And they were for the most elite credit card holders. And a lot of these guys here did not have credit cards that were platinum. They may have been lucky to have something that was gold or whatever, but platinum at the time was incredible. So a lot of folks that were looking for something that they could flash in a restaurant, you know, drop on a counter or whatever, this was also going to, you know, a lot of people just went ahead and got the card without the intent of doing any transfers. I still counted it as a sale. And, you know, and so a lot of those folks would get the credit card. Now, like I said, it would count as a sale. So this is what happened. So we would be calling people up on the phone. And so what Providian would do is they were also buying information from the credit bureaus at the time for folks that fit into their mathematical model that were most likely not going to default. If they had more credit, they would still make the minimum payment, which was the most important because the interest rates on the cards were really high. And then if they missed payments, they also got dinged pretty heavy on having fees, you know, that would be assessed. So the whole goal was to loan these folks money and then to turn around and sell them products like credit protection, which was, I don't know if it was 89 cents per $100 or something like that. And this, in case something happened, they died, it would pay off the credit card. And then if they were late, you know, they'd get hit with the, at the time, they were really high credit card late fees, which really aren't nothing compared to now. I think they were $24, $19, $25, $30 or something, which were pretty high at the time. This is like back in the late 90s. And, you know, the other thing that they would do is they would, you know, like I said, they would ultimately, in the end, they would end up getting this product. And so what we would do on the front end, we would acquire credit card portfolios of banks that were spending off their lowest tier. We would also aggressively market through lists that we bought through the 3 credit bureaus at the time. And so we had a campaign where we would send tons of mail, and then we'd also obtain people's phone numbers. So what we did on the dialers is we would call these folks and try to get them to do balance transfers, try to get them to open up their credit card if it was, get a platinum card. If they already had an account with us through previously before that was gold, we would try to do everything we can do to get them to upgrade their card to platinum and agree to the new terms of service, you know, so, and that's what we did all day long. And so once I got there, things that already had been going kind of bad for Providian. And so we would call folks, and the dialer would call, we would wait, we get to take the phone call, and folks would be like, you know, put me on the do not call list, you know, don't call me anymore. You guys call me all day long. And so with the dialer technology they used to use, the dialers were predictive dialers. And this was very, very new technology. And so what they would do is they would call maybe every 10 or 15 minutes and wait for a response where somebody picked up the phone. And then it would note that. And so it would develop a pattern of when people were home based on when they picked up the phone. And if they had an answer machine at the time, you know, this is kind of really almost wide scale voicemail, it would actually hang up. And so people would be like, hey, you guys are calling me all day long. I keep getting all these hang up calls on my answer machine. I don't want your services. I don't want the credit cards. I've been torn it up. You guys have lied to me, and I don't appreciate it. So the primary product that we sold was, like I said, balance transfers. And so we would tell folks, hey, we're going to give you an introductory rate of 1.9 or 3.9, whatever it might be, which is good for 90 days. And what that allows you to do is you can take and turn in, send it to us, your credit card statements that you have, and for the balances that you transfer. And we would use that information to determine a better rate for you overall. And so people were like, well, what's that rate? We're like, well, we can't tell you till we get the credit card statements. And so essentially what they would do is they would do a weighted average. So if you had a credit card that was like 1.9%, and it was a permanent regular rate, that's what they would go by. And if you only had like $100 on that particular card, you know, and you had another card that had 20,000 on it, but it was at 29.99, when you weigh the two together, the credit card at the highest rate has the most weight. So that would have the most weight in the financial calculation. And they would give you, so whatever that particular average rate was, they would give you a lower rate overall. So they would give you like 0.25% less. So if your new rate between the two was 29.75, you would get a rate of 29.50 from Providian Financial. And so folks, and we would encourage folks to close their credit cards and not use them, and just use the Providian card going forward. And I tell you, when folks found out what their rates overall were, or they didn't follow the instructions to send in their statements, the balance transfer would default to whatever their highest rate was on the credit card at the time. So it might have been 29.99. So somebody might have transferred a 15.99 rate that they had to us, but if they didn't send in the statement showing that they had that rate for us to beat, we would just default it to the 29% rate or whatever it was at the time for balance transfers. And so folks would, when they found out about this and they didn't comply with the basic instructions, or when they finally got the better rate overall they were supposed to get, these guys were hot. And it became very difficult to try to work there in this environment. And like I said, we were under a different type of surveillance that wasn't really popular at the time. Like I said, they invented a lot of stuff, you know, for employee monitoring, the workplace calls, you know, that type of stuff. And they would also have a call quality team that would be listening to calls. And so once you got into this environment and you were working, let me see if I get up this real quick. So once you got into this dream environment, it all of a sudden became like, oh man, what are we doing here? And it was tough. And so the one thing that they would do all the time, without notice, folks would get fired. So you would see all the way on the other side of the building, inside this big room, you would see security and the termination team coming. And you're like, oh no, who's getting fired? And you see them come, get closer. And you gotta remember, there's probably 30 rows of cubicles in this building. And you'd see them turn and turn left. And you'd be like, oh cool, it's not me today. And so I shortly afterwards started to see tons of folks there that were getting fired. And so if you used up all your sick time, you got fired. No questions about it. And so a lot of people had issues with childcare, and they were single moms, and if they were late too much, they would get terminated. And I was one of the few people there that actually had a future where I was only there temporarily until I got my degree, then I was gone. But a lot of folks that were there, they didn't have that benefit. And so I remember seeing tons of folks get fired. And so I think the saddest thing that I saw, and I don't think I'm going to have enough time to cover all the other topics, so I'll do those another day. I might even start doing a series on the couch. But the saddest thing I would see was folks that would, have brought and decorated their cubicle with pictures of them, their husband. They had plants, they had stuffed animals and things they had collected from Disneyland, and they would cover their cubicle with them. And when those folks got fired, when they came in with the box and they were walking through all the rows, then they came down your row or one close to you, and they went to these individuals and said, hey, you're gonna have to come with us. Please remove all your stuff from the desk. You knew exactly what was gonna happen. In the meantime, you had to still keep working. You had to produce, and if you weren't making sales, at least a minimum amount a day, you would get fired also as well. And so the saddest thing was, like I said, seeing folks that had, put their life into this company and them turning around and getting fired and having to take everything down and walk out. So what I did was I decorated my desk, but only with the scripts. I had nothing personal, and I was ready every day to get fired. And if I got fired, all I had to do was grab my backpack and my pencil or pen off the desk and go sign the paperwork and be gone. So the lesson here is, and so let me just say this. Eventually I ended up leaving and started working in the industry. I was getting close to graduating, and there were so many things that were going on negative with Providian. And I think what their downfall was, as long as they focused on the subprime market, those folks didn't have the money or the resources to fight back. And so once we ran out of subprime people to hit, they started moving up the portfolio, getting better tiered folks that had better credit, trying to push the same things to them. And when they started doing that, those folks had the resources and the ability to fight back. They were professionals, some of them were attorneys, whatever it might be, and they ultimately ended up filing a suit against Providian Financial. And they got dinged for fraud and deceptive credit practices related to the portfolio of items that they were offering clients. And so at the time, I think the comptroller of concurrency came down on them pretty hard, along with the city of San Francisco, the district attorney's office. And they were, at the time, for a financial institution, they ended up having to settle a $300 million settlement, and then they had to change the way that they did business going forward. And so it was kind of crazy to see all this stuff happen after I left. And so what I did was, when I worked there, I went out of my way to try to let folks know that took the credit card products, that what they were getting themselves into And if that's what they wanted to do, I'm good with it, you know. And, you know, that's kind of how you have to approach these type of things. So, like I said, after I was long gone, they had the largest settlement against them. And I probably would assume this was like back in 2000 when this happened. I probably assume in today's terms, you know, they would have gotten probably a $1 billion settlement that they would have had to pay regarding to what they did. So I'll tell you guys, you just have to be careful where you end up working at and what you end up doing. And at some point, if things are tough and kind of sketchy, you know, you're gonna have to do what you can do to maintain, you know, honesty and integrity. And if that doesn't work, you're gonna have to quit the job and, you know, go on someplace else. So, and I think in 2005, they got acquired by Washington Mutual. And you remember what happened with WAMU in 2008 with the financial crisis. They collapsed. And I think Chase Manhattan Bank came in and picked up the remainder of the pieces. So yeah, it was a tough spot to work at the time. And I kept my integrity and I did what I was supposed to do. You know, I didn't cross the line. In the end, I left. The company crumbled. And it got taken down, and one of the final straw was when the financial crisis hit, you know, and WAMU went under. So did Providian at that time, you know. So that's it, guys. So I don't have anything else to talk about. I don't get a chance to talk about the other stuff, but you know, do everything you can do out here right now to stay away from fraud and stay out of it as much as possible, because at some point in the end, there's nothing you can do when they come to get you. So that's it, guys. Take care. I'm almost out of time here. I just want to say thanks for listening and stay safe. We got this big winter storm coming, and I'm going to try to see if I can ride this out. Take care, guys. We'll be in touch. In my life. Shit. Okay. My brother fell. This is black ice. Okay. All right, I'm okay. All systems check. All right, I'm good. So let me just penguin it.